Hey guys, what's up? Instead of our normal how-to where we show you how to rig something, I'm going to go ahead and walk you guys through how I have my bag set up for this winter fishing season. Alright guys, I'm going to start off with my side pouch. First thing is I always have my spare clips. These are Tactical Anglers power clips to the 50 pounders. I've gotten the 75 pound ones in the past. They're a little hard to work with, a little heavy. Always keep some leader. 40 is what I like through and through for almost every situation. So I've got Cigar, I've got Daiwa. What I particularly like about the Daiwa is it's twice the line, half the price, essentially being a quarter of the price. I don't seem to notice a difference. Are you gonna notice a difference on tuna or a more critical fish? I'm not sure, but on calicos, I'm not seeing a difference between the two. I always have a glove. I like monkey glove. I work construction, so if my hand gets tore up, it's something I have to deal with all week long. Got the kicker lighter. It's a jet lighter, so you're not going to be as affected by the wind. I'm mainly fishing at night. I'll occasionally go out on the day. So just in case, I always keep a little surface sunscreen. In case I gotta feed the wash down, I've always got some quarters. On my other side, the zipper is broken. I know you can go get them fixed. I haven't. But so one thing I always make sure is my scent does not go in the same side as my glove. That ends up just getting old and annoying. Typically what I'll also do is if I have larger items that haven't gotten broken down into a box, like I have some big gills and trout from the other night, those will go there. This side ends up tending to be a grab bag. On the back, I have some mesh. I always like to keep a couple of these plastic sleeves. This one's got an A-rig in it. But if you're throwing on something with a treble hook, covers it up real nice so that you're not hooking yourself on the boat. If I'm fishing with trebles, like a jerkbait, like a crankbait, I like to have one of these. Keeps me away from the bait. Always keep a scale. Scissors and pliers, and just in case of emergencies, a couple hookup baits. I almost never use them, but I'm not going to say I never have. Now here's where we get into winter specific with the front pouch. Now normally in the summer I'll keep a tray that's got crankbaits, maybe a tray that's got jerk baits. In the winter, and definitely spinnerbaits, chatterbaits. In the winter, I tend to throw less of that. So up here in the front of my box, I got a couple PVC tubes where I'll keep a couple crankbaits. Got a 1 ounce warbait spinner. The sudden impact curly tail grub, by the way, on there. Now where I may use a spinner in the winter is going low and slow. And that's where I'll pull out this 2-ounce musky spinner. It's got a bigger sudden impact trailer on the back. And with that, I may actually play that a little lower and try for that winter aggressive bite. Now, if I'm having one of those nights where I'm just getting hammered cast after cast after cast, I'm gonna start upsizing. I've got the Dallin Baits halibut here. Got the 8-inch trout. You know what, I'm not even sure what this is. Lunchbox Tats gave it to me. Really cool bait though, good size. Haven't caught on that one yet, hoping to this winter. Some of the old sudden impacts here. Then another trout. Now, this isn't what I'm going out and just throwing initially. This is on that hot night when I want to start weeding out the smaller fish. Or where I feel everything's being so aggressive that I want to get that larger aggressive fish that may not be as quick as some of the other fish. Now again, we're talking winter bass. Some people will say it's the fall transition. That may be true. I tend to fish summer or winter. I don't really have a specific fall or spring thing that I do different. The big difference for me when it comes to winter is that's when I'm gonna start breaking out the larger trout and the larger bluegills. Definite go-to box for me is gonna be my trout and gill box. So it seemed in the summer, my best bet with the trout was to kind of give them a couple quick cranks off the bottom, let them fall, and I'd get hit on the fall. I wasn't as successful during the summer as I was during the winter with the trout. Not to say that they didn't bring on big bites. As the winter rolls on, this will be the first thing I throw at a spot. Very first thing I'll do is I'll throw the trout once or twice, and from there, based on the reactions I get, that's where I'll make the decision which direction I go with my next cast. Now typically I'll have multiple rods set up, so I'm not necessarily changing out baits. I'm changing out rods completely, so it's a quick transition. One of the other baits I'll play that I don't talk about as often is the sunfish from Sudden Impact, which you can see kind of fills a gap between the bluegill and the trout. The really cool thing about these bluegills is I got 3 sizes to choose from. I used to fish the dark sleeper a lot. You're not going to see the dark sleeper in this bag because I don't really trust the hooks. I had a hook straighten out on me with a 6-pound sand bass, and it was, when I landed it was literally just holding on by the barb. If I hadn't had a net, it would not have made the bounce onto the boat. But the awesome thing about these bluegills is they have a little air pocket. They will always land standing straight up. So I could play them very similar to the way I would play the dark sleeper, and because it's got that beast hook inside of it, I don't have to worry about it bending out. Now the great thing with there being 3 different sizes is if I get into a finicky bite, I could downsize and everything's gonna eat that. And that doesn't mean you won't catch a big fish on that. I've caught up to, I think my 8-pounder was on the middle size. So smallest you have the little gill, medium you have the junior gill, and the large one is the Susie gill. Next up, we have the Fluke box. When I first started fishing the breakwall, Flukes is what I really put together the bite on. That's where I really started getting those high count nights of fishing. Those 80 to 100 fish nights for me was on the Fluke. Now in a lot of these trays, I'll have the occasional really small bait. Now I'm not going to fish this, I believe it's a 3-inch Fluke. I'm not going to fish that at the wall. That's going to be for if it's too rough out and I got to go inside and I'm fishing for spotties. I'll still fish the full-size Fluke for spotties, but I like to have that option to downsize. I don't need a lot of them, just enough for a night of spotty fishing. A lot of people are going to tell you color doesn't matter. And for them, maybe it doesn't. For me, it does. I've had nights where nothing's hitting but orange. And having those orange has saved my night. I've had nights where nothing's hitting but white Flukes. And that saved my night. So I'm gonna always run with a full box loaded out like this. With the exception of if I were in a situation where I couldn't bring my bag, but I don't know how I'd be in that situation for the most part, because the footprint one tray takes up sitting down is about what the bag takes up. So having the big bag isn't taking up much more room than one tray. Now, I'm always gonna have the 8-inch, and it's kind of that same mentality as I was talking about earlier. If I'm having a tough night, these 5 3/4 Flukes will make my night. I used to fish Zoom Fluke. I used to fish a lot of brands of Fluke. Once I got a hold of the sudden impact, something about the way they're made and being just slightly longer, I think the action's unparalleled. So Zoom also makes 7-inch Fluke, and it works. It works great. That was my first experience, was upsizing, was the Zoom 7-inch Fluke. The 8 inches are bigger, and I've gotten bigger fish on them. And again, just the action's unparalleled. Now, one thing to note, and I'm not going to necessarily be doing this during the winter, but if you put the Fluke on a sled head, something about the way it stabilizes it, and now this is going to be different than a lead head. You can put the Fluke on a lead head as well. Now, when I play this on the lead head, I'm going to get a lot of body roll. When I play it on the sled head, and again, I'm not quite sure what's making that difference, but when I play it on the sled head, it's going to start to swim. This is the rig I caught the Dorado on, just burning it quick, letting it swim. And again, I'm going to have a couple smaller baits, just in case I have to end my night inside the harbor. Now, this chatterbait, I have a Z-Man head, and what I particularly like about this Z-Man head is it's got a weed guard. A lot of chatterbaits don't have a weed guard. This one does. I find that pretty helpful. So the next tray I'm going to go through is going to be slugs. Now, you don't have to be as crazy as me with this. You can have your slugs and flukes in the same tray. It's just what I do. Typically my flukes are going to be Texas rig. I'm going to have a little glass bead. You're going to get that clank, clank, clank as I move it. You're going to have the weight falling with the hook falling differently. Now what I'm going to do with my slugs is I'm going to put them on a lead head or a skirted jig head. And I'm going to be doing a lot more banging these into rocks, playing them down low, letting them hit and move. I'm going to have a variety. I'm going to have some of the down 7-inch. I'm going to have sudden impact 8-inch. And you're going to even see just between these two, we got a difference in thickness and we got a difference in mass. And they're both going to do different things in different situations. And then about the smallest I'm gonna go at the wall is these 5-inch. That one's all tore up. You can see it was putting in work. These 5-inch sudden impact slugs. Now I will also have the 4-inch Dallin slugs, but I'm usually reserving those for if I have to go inside. And I'll rig these in a variety of ways. Skirted jig head. I've got one of those 3/4 ounce Z-Man heads again. And this one's actually been modified and chopped up a little, just to give it a lot more wiggle as it's going through the column. I'll even use scrounger heads, which are really cool because they move a lot. It's gonna be similar to the chatterbait, but also completely different, where the chatter tends to want a quick thump. These are more of a wider side to side. The really cool thing about all of these is they're gonna sometimes work in situations where the Fluke doesn't work. When I'm not getting bit on the Fluke, I'll sometimes get bit on these and vice versa. I don't fully understand it, except for maybe it's that I'm playing them different. Now you can throw these slugs on a Texas rig and it's gonna work. It's gonna work like a Fluke. And you can throw the Flukes onto a lead head and play them like you're playing the slugs. Sure, you can do all of that, and you should do all of that. I'm just kind of going over how I like to fish. All right, next tray, I'm gonna pull out creatures. My go-to is Flukes. If I can bring one thing, I have to catch a fish, I'm bringing one thing. I'm bringing a 5 3/4 inch Fluke on a Texas rig. That's my confidence bait. If I need to catch one big fish, it's probably gonna be that 5 3/4 inch trout. That's my confident big fish bait. There's times where all I'm catching on is Fluke. There's times where all I'm catching on is slugs. And oddly enough, there's times where the flavor of the day is the creature, in particular the craw. I had one night where this was it. The sudden impact punch craw. We caught 9 fish on the boat that night. Really slow night for the whole boat. But 4 of them were 4-pounders. So it was weird. It was a big fish night, but a slow night. Every single fish punched craw, and we threw the sink at them. We tried all sorts of different stuff. So in this box, I'm gonna have the punch craw. I'm gonna have the 702, which is a craw that kicks. So sort of a swim craw. I'll put this on a jig head, and you'll get big hits on that thing moving it along. I'll have the chatter blaster, and that'll be, I'm not really gonna play this for Calico. This is back to, if we have to go into the harbors, that's gonna be my spotty candy right there. Some other go-tos, if they're starting to hit big craws. I've just got some absolute monsters in here. And you can see this one's rigged up really funny. And that's because I'm gonna let that play and let the arms move in the current. And you can attract the fish just sitting there on the dead stick. I love the sudden impact HDX craw. It's realistic looking. I've caught big calico, big sand bass on this, and I've even caught my PB spotty. So this is one of those ones where I can use in both situations. And again, I'm rigging it up on the hook so that as it's sitting there, those claws are waving around. It lets you have a secondary action when you're dead sticking. I'm on all of these, or almost all of these, except for the swim craw, the 702, I'm gonna be rigging them up on that hook. And a lot of guys rig them straight, and that's great. Whammer, slammer, same thing. I'm gonna rig that up. And the thing about the Whammer Slammers, I'm getting what I get out of the HDX craw, but I'm just getting a nice large profile for those nights that they're feeding big. Now, another one that just works killer is the Long Beach Dragon Tail. I've heard a couple guys say like, oh, they're funny, they don't look like they would really swim. Well, yeah, you're not swimming these. Again, you're using them, you're playing them like a creature. You're playing them a lot like a dark sleeper, where I'm gonna bounce this along, I'm gonna let it bang into the bottom and let that tail do movement as it's dredging along the bottom. I'm gonna be able to leave this, it's gonna sit flat, and it's gonna have that great secondary action in the current. I also like to keep grubs. If I see that they're hitting on the fall, that's when I'm gonna move to that curly tail grub, because that just has a killer action on the fall. And on that same note, I'm gonna have a lot of smaller grubs for when I move into the harbor. I believe these are from Predator swimbaits. Gardner grubs. Now, one of my favorite ways to catch them, this is going to be the paddle tail. The beauty with the paddle tails is I have the ability to play them slow and dredge the bottom, or speed it up and get a lot of action and get those aggressive bites. Got a couple ways I'm going to play them. I'll do it on a neck breaker. This one was actually painted to match the Violet Hollow Shad by Nick from SoCal Fishing Squad. Pretty cool head. Putting a lot of work on this one. I'll use lead heads, Viking head, war bait, Dallin lead, any of those. And on the torpedoes, I'll even use beast hooks. I've got a variety in here. The Dallin baits have a big square tail, so it's going to get some good thumping going. I like the tight, moderate action on the sudden impacts. But hands down, if I'm only fishing one, I'm fishing that torpedo. I love it fast. I love it slow. It's always kicking. If I bring this up, the second it starts to dip, it's kicking again. So that's going to be a majority of what I have in this box. Now, during the winter, this box isn't coming out. I'm just going to stop playing it fast and start playing it slow. So then lastly, I'm gonna have my 2 boxes for terminal tackle. This is where I'm gonna keep my jig heads, my chatterbaits, my lead. Then over in this one, I'm gonna keep clips, beast hooks, everything I need for Texas rigs, scroungers, and I'm even going to keep a couple flat falls. Couple axe blades, couple heavy duty 1 ounce lipless cranks. I'm also going to have replacement tail spinners.
Hey yo, Fraxo, this the one.